Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Arise on a Tuesday and back to our journey through the Hebrew alphabet. I hope that you enjoyed last week, the teaching on Lamed, the central letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And I really hope that because it's a very special letter. So I hope that if none of this has really kind of spoken to you up until now, if last week's teaching made you think, no, hang on, there is something in all of this. And then maybe you just need to go back and watch all the others once again, just to, because sometimes we just need to be pointed in the right direction. And you might have thought that I was losing it up until this point, but last week's letter, I think, would have been enough to convince anyone that God is in the center of the Hebrew alphabet and that he is speaking to us on a deeper level, and there is a deeper level of revelation available to us if we would just be prepared to learn and to be taught and to reach out and to also look at things differently to the way we would normally look at them. It's Hebrew is very much outside of my comfort zone, unless you are a Hebrew speaker, or a Jewish person who just naturally understands all of these things. It's outside of all of our comfort zones, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something we should just look at and just give God a chance to speak to us through this, in the same way as he speaks to us through so many other things. So this week we are on to another very interesting letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and this is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and it is the letter Mem. And it is a very interesting letter. You'll see it's one of those letters that has sort of two sides to it once again. But it is the letter Mem. So phonetically it is M as in mum, but it's Mem. And as I said, it's the 13th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the pictograph for the letter Mem is a wave of water. It's absolutely incredible. It's just, it's a wave of water. Whereas the classical Hebrew script is a kaf with a vav beside it. Now, remember what I said last week, that all the letters that are made up of, each letter has a numeric value attached to it. And so there are some letters where the letters that make up that letter, their numeric values added together add up to 26, which is the number that the letters in the sacred name or the name Yahweh, Yot He Vav He, add up to. And so this is another one of those letters, the letter Mem, where it's made up of a kaf and a vav, and those two together add up to 26, which is then the numerical value for the sacred name for Yahweh. So if there is ever any doubt in your mind, it's just it is just proved over and over again in every single letter that these letters point to God every single time. So there are a few meanings to Mem, to the word Mem, which is the name of the letter, and it means different things. So it means there are a few things. It means waters, people, nations, languages, tongues, liquid, sea, which, for those of you who know that when you dream, in your dreams, if you dream of the sea, often the sea is representative of nations or people groups, and that this is where that comes from, because the Mem is a wave of water, but the meaning of the word, part of the meaning of the word actually points towards nations and people groups. And then the sea represents chaos, actually, to Hebrew people. So the Hebrew people of old were generally quite scared of the sea. So the sea represented chaos to them. But in this instance, the Mem actually is seen to represent the sea of Torah. So what you would consider to be the sea of knowledge, the sea of wisdom, and if you think of the sea in terms of the fact that man has only managed to explore a percentage of the sea, there's still these unexplored, unfathomable depths to the sea. You can see as well that there are unexplored, unfathomable depths to Scripture or to the Torah that are represented within this letter, and you'll hear more about that just now. So numerically, the letter Mem, the numeric value attached to the letter Mem is 40, because we're going up in tens, remember? So it is 40. And 40 means maturity in leadership. It also means a period of trial or testing that ends in either victory or discipline. And obviously, we can see where that comes from. It comes from all the various periods of 40 in the Bible. It rained for 40 days and nights, before the flood. The Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. There's 40 days between Moses, the Exodus and Moses getting the Torah on Mount Sinai. And Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness fasting. And what's also quite interesting that came out of this whole study of the numeric value of Mem, which is 40, is that they in some of the Jewish research or the Jewish sages, they equate 40 days to 40 years. And from a messianic perspective, because the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness and failed, because they failed the test, which resulted in discipline, which was 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness, but he passed the test. He was tempted he fasted for 40 days in the wilderness, and then he was tempted by the devil, and he actually passed that test. So he reclaimed the victory that the Israelites had lost. So his 40 days in the wilderness mirrored the Israelites' 40 years in the wilderness, but he claimed the victory for them, the victory that they hadn't managed to step into, which I thought was just incredible, which is why they say that 40 can speak to this period of trial, which ends either in victory or discipline, but obviously we always just trust for victory. Then it speaks to life in terms of their 40 weeks of pregnancy. And here is another one of those little insights into, remember I said to you in last week when we spoke about Lamed, I said the 30 is an age of maturity. And that is because the Jewish sages believe that it is 40 years before a man develops insight. And notice they say a man, not a woman. So 40 is another age of maturity. You're not quite fully there yet, but they say that men are 40 before they develop insight. So there we go. Haven't we all been saying that for years? But anyway, so moving on. So the incredible thing about Mem, when you see it in relation to the sea representing chaos to the Hebrews, but at the same time representing the sea of knowledge through the Torah and through Scripture, is that it actually has two forms. The letter Mem has two forms. It has an open form and a closed form. And the open form is said to represent the revealed truth of God, and the closed form is said to represent the concealed truth of God. Those hidden mysteries, those hidden revelations that God keeps for us to search after, because it builds relationship with Him and because He just loves for us to look for things, that He's hidden for us. It's also another incredible fact is that one of the Hebrew names for God, and forgive me, I actually couldn't find the pronunciation for this, so I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing this correctly. If I'm not, I'm sorry. But one of the Hebrew names for God is spelled Makom. To me, it looks like Makom, which means place. Okay, and this name, the actual Hebrew word makom, as you can tell from just the way I'm pronouncing it, it includes both an open and a closed mem, and it means place. And what that means to them, to the Hebrew people, is that God's presence is open and revelatory, but also shrouded in deep mystery. And isn't that amazing? Because how often is it that we want to carry the presence of God? We want to walk in the presence of God. We want to experience the presence of God more and more and more. And God is so open to that. He so wants to pour His presence out on us. He so wants to make His presence known to us. So in that way, His presence is open and revelatory. But at the same time, the more you step into the presence of God, the more you step into the presence of who He is and all the facets of who He is, the more you realize that He is shrouded in deep mystery. It's almost the more open He is and the more revelation you receive on Him, the more mystery you can still see is ahead of you. I mean, sometimes I wonder whether we aren't just going to spend all of eternity just learning more about God, because I think probably it will take all of eternity to know everything about him. So it's another space where the Hebrew language just speaks to the nature of God and also speaks to our experience of God and who God is, all encapsulated in one small letter, in this letter Mem, which then has specifically been put at the beginning and the end of this word makom, which means place, which is a Hebrew name for God, which then speaks to how his presence is both open and revelatory and shrouded in deep mystery. So it's one of those paradoxical letters again, where you get to see things through two different lenses almost, in the same way that you just get to see God through two different experiences in terms of him being so open to share himself with you, and yet there are always secrets. There's always more to learn. There's always more to step into. So it's just an incredible secret. Well, not so much of a secret anymore, but it is an incredible lesson to learn from the Hebrew alphabet, just how God is hidden in all of these letters. And if you just look, and this is literally just scratching the surface. This is just scratching the surface. There is so much more. There is so much more depth that I think you could probably study each letter for months on end and still not quite get to the end of it. So that is the letter Mem. I hope that intrigued you and interested you and excited you and just made you even more in awe of who God is and what he's done and how he hides and yet reveals himself to us all at the same time. And next week, we are going to move on to look at the next letter, which is Nun. And that is the 14th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So we're making our way there. And there are 22 letters in total. So we still have a little way to go, but we are more than halfway there now. And so that will be next week, Tuesday. And don't forget that Thursdays are still prophetic teachings. And don't forget to contact me if you need to chat about anything. All my contact details are on the screen. You can just get in touch with me any way that works best for you. And apart from that, I'm going to say goodbye and I shall see you next week and love you lots. See you soon.